Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're going to recap this week in cannabis news from July 12th to the 18th, excluding the news of the federal legalization bill. I've covered that already, so you can grab the link below in the description if you want to watch that. But before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And then, of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can learn about the evolution of the industry over time, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you feel ready. But we're going to start with Akerna's data coming back as the 4th of July brought in the second highest cannabis retail sales day of 2021, telling us that Americans like to celebrate with cannabis. So this is great to see. Apparently Friday, July 2nd, the beginning of the 4th of July weekend, was the second largest sales day for the cannabis industry in 2021, with 89.6 million in retail sales brought in, only falling behind 420 sales. So 4th of July weekend has historically been in the top 10 sales day of the year for cannabis, and this year's holiday weekend supported that trend. And basically with what Akerna is showing us is that data shows that when the holiday falls on weekends, consumers are spending their largest sums on the Fridays, and in 2021 this has proven to be true for Valentine's Day, Memorial Day, and now the 4th of July weekend. So any holiday that falls on a weekend, we're going to be seeing the most spending on the Friday. And just a few of the breakdowns here: average basket size, medical was 2.98 products, recreational was 3.2, and the total weekend sales was approximately 182.6 million. Now, they did project a little over 200 million. I think it was 204 million, so they were short of the total sales that included the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. But regardless, big number was spent on that Friday, and again, it just goes to show that Americans are voting with their dollars, so that's great to see. On to this from MJ Biz Daily. Cannabis industry scores $5 billion worth of legalization wins in 2021 via state legislatures. So 2021 is shaping up to be a record year for the legislative-driven recreational cannabis legalization, and cannabis industry executives and advocates have lawmakers and governors in 4 states to thank for that. Now, I want to underscore that I think there's a lot of work being done by activists and individuals in these states that are helping this change as well. So seems like they're being forgotten a little bit in here, and I want to give them a big shout out. But regardless, it has shown that legislative action from lawmakers has made a big impact in these states. And the MJ Biz Factbook projects these 4 markets, Connecticut, New Mexico, New York, and Virginia, together will generate more than $4.5 billion in annual sales by their 4th year of operation. So if these legal markets are to come online on time in 2022, they're anticipating by 2026 they will add at least this much. And in addition, $500 million in annual medical cannabis sales are expected to be produced over that time through MMJ legalization this year in the deep south state of Alabama, again thanks to lawmakers and the governor. This year's adult use victories represent a record number of legislative wins for recreational and cannabis advocates. They reflect how recreational cannabis legalization increasingly is being steered by lawmakers and governor rather than the citizens alone. And I would just say that it's all of them. Don't try and say that one's doing it without the other. It's a group, it's a team effort, absolutely. But just wanted to highlight Connecticut. In their first year, they anticipate 250 million. Then in their 4th year, 750 million in sales. New Mexico, 150 million up to 425 million. New York will be the big one, obviously, 1.1 billion. And then in their 4th year, 2.1 billion. I imagine this growth is going to accelerate a lot. But again, these are projections based on conservative and high expectations, I imagine, so they're trying to just stay average and not overshoot. And then Virginia, though, 500 million up to 1.3 billion, but Virginia's not expected to start their market till 2024 even, so that could be a long way out. Regardless, this is good news to see that new markets add more total addressable potential sales, and then legal U.S. cannabis sales could top 30 billion by 2022 thanks to continued growth in new markets, apparently, again from new data. This is from Headset. So with new markets coming online and existing markets trending upwards, legal cannabis sales in the U.S. are projected to surpass 30 billion in 2022, which is just the end of next year, and that's a big jump considering a lot of these projections are saying 40 billion by 2026, according to an updated long-term forecast by Seattle-based cannabis analytics firm Headset. The latest forecast includes impending recreational cannabis markets in New Mexico and Connecticut, and a medical market in Alabama, each set to begin their sales in 2022. Though some of those markets will be open for business for only part of 2022, the total annualized first-year sales volumes for the 3 will be near 300 million according to Headset. One unknown is the opening of the gargantuan recreational market in New York. Regulatory delays in New York could push the opening of sales in what's expected to be a 1.2 billion market beyond 2022, but the potential exists that unknown markets could open up as state lawmakers around the U.S. debate legalizing adult use or medical cannabis markets. So still a lot of growth to be had, but this does show us with new markets coming online and existing markets trending upwards by opening more access points and loosening regulations. U.S. legalized cannabis is projected to surpass $30 billion by 2022. And if we look, these are the projected U.S. sales. This is a typo here. I think this should be 2020 because referring to sales that we saw last year, 18.5 billion. 2021, they're anticipating 23.6, and then a big jump up to 30.5 into 2022. So that'll be interesting to see if that plays out the way that they're projecting. But regardless, great news that, more markets adds more potential sales. On to the Office of Medical Cannabis Use. This is coming from Florida. As we can see, they managed to bring their total up to 587,624 patients, which is an increase of, 2,821 patients in just that last week alone. So good progress there as Trulieve and Fluent open more locations. While if we look at the sales breakdown, we can see that Trulieve again is leading the way in Florida with all that market share. But the main thing is that we can see steady sales every single week. As long as these numbers are not significantly dropping, that's a good thing because it means people are returning to buy the same amount of cannabis as they were previously doing or returning to buy more. Now, the other thing that was big to notice is that all we could see this past week was news about cannabis in the press and in the headlines from mainstream American media sources. And this is a big deal because any press is good press, and that's why companies spend billions on marketing because conditioning works. So the more you see headlines saying, new push to legalize cannabis at the federal level, we need some sort of legalization, then it's going to start to just make people think, maybe, we do need some legalization. That's typically what conditioning with messaging does. That's why marketing works so well. But regardless, I'm not going to spend any time on these articles. I just want to show that after this week, we could see cannabis was all over these mainstream articles. Schumer launches long shot bid for legal weed as the majority leader backs cannabis legalization, but still needs to convince his party, Republicans, and even the president. Again, this is just showing that the people are way ahead of the leaders, which, again, puts us in a very unique time in history. But this one from The Hill, Schumer, cannabis legalization will be a Senate priority. From New York Times, Schumer proposes federal decriminalization of cannabis. So although it's a great start, besides the three men involved in creating this bill, there is zero leadership coming from the federal level. So if we want to find leadership in the cannabis industry, we have to go to individual states. And we can see this from Illinois News as Governor Pritzker announces the lottery dates for 185 cannabis dispensary licenses and notifies over 200 awardees of craft, grow, infuser, and transporter licenses. So this is a big deal because this has been in the works for a long time, yet we have not seen action from the governor of Illinois. And basically what he's saying is now he's announced that the Illinois State Lottery will conduct a total of 3 lotteries for adult use dispensary licensing applicants this year. The lotteries will be held on July 29th, August 5th, and August 19th. So we have the dates, and within the next month, all 3 of them are going to be held, which is progress considering how slow government is at taking action on these things. So for the details, under the CRTA, the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation is permitted to issue 75 conditional adult use cannabis dispensary licenses. This one is to existing license holders, including MSOs, while HB 1443, which was introduced by Representative LaShawn Ford and Leader Light Ford and supported by the administration, expands opportunities by creating 2 new lotteries, a social equity justice involved lottery for 55 additional licenses to be awarded to those who have received a score of at least 85% on their application or 213 out of the total 250 possible points, and live in a disproportionately impacted area, has an eligible cannabis conviction, or a family member with an eligible cannabis conviction, and a lottery for an additional 55 licenses for applicants who had a score of at least 85% on their application. In total, 185 dispensary licenses will be determined through the lottery process, which means on top of I'm not exactly sure whether Illinois currently has 75 or 110 retail dispensaries open, but this is going to add 185 onto that, which will allow more sales as well, but also the social equity that they've been intending to stick to their word to and follow through with for a very long time. So the July one will be the lottery for qualifying applicants who received a score of at least 85%. Then the August 5th one will be the lottery for social justice involved applicants. And then the 19th, the final lottery will be held for the top scoring tied applicants for the original 75 licenses outlined in the CRTA. But on top of that, Illinois is also using $3.5 million in cannabis revenue to prevent violence in their state. So this is again an example of when you lead properly, you get extra money so that you can do things to make life for people in your state better. Illinois officials announced on Friday that they are awarding $3.5 million in grants funded by cannabis tax revenue to organizations that work to reduce violence through street intervention programs. This is the latest funding opportunity to be made available through the Restore, Reinvest, and Renew program, which was created under Illinois' cannabis legalization law. The policy stipulates that 25% of cannabis tax dollars must go to community reinvestment for communities most impacted by violence, incarceration, and poverty. These new grants will support efforts to specifically combat violence during the summer months when crime is typically highest. So this is a great attempt at, again, using this new revenue that you have in these tax dollars to actually try and make positive change. And if we don't attempt to do it, we're never going to know what's possible, right? So it's good to see some states taking the lead and leading this charge, and Illinois is one of them. So it's great to see that from them. Also, New Jersey, another state that is really leading the way in this cannabis push, dismisses nearly 88,000 cannabis-related cases under new weed law. So this is real leadership in terms of, actual problems and solutions that are right in front of your eyes that could really, free up a lot of tax dollars that are being wasted in arresting people. Regardless, New Jersey has vacated or dismissed nearly 88,000 cases related to cannabis convictions following the decriminalization of certain cannabis offenses in the state. The New Jersey courts announced Monday that these thousands of cases are the first of about 360,000 identified by a superior or municipal courts as eligible to be vacated, dismissed, or expunged under the cannabis decriminalization law that went into effect under July 1st. This is going to save so much money for taxpayer dollars in New Jersey, and just think about nationwide how much money this could save for taxpayers and just how much better these resources could be allocated. The decriminalization law, Gov. Phil Murphy assigns the administrative office of the courts to task the vacating guilty verdicts, pleas, and placements in diversionary programs in cases before February 22nd, 2021, which was the day Murphy signed the law into legislation. But if any cop is arresting people after that day, they should not be a police officer because they're just abusing their power, really have no sense and decency of being a human. But regardless, this comes from New York News from NBC. On to some other states, though, that are making progress. Ohio lawmakers to file first-of-its-kind cannabis legalization bill as activists pursue local reform. So as we're anticipating which states might move to legalization in 2022, well, we've got a list of them coming right up. Ohio being the first, lawmakers are preparing to file a bill to legalize and regulate cannabis in the state. This would mark the first time such proposal to allow recreational cannabis commerce has been introduced in the legislature, and they've already got a solid medical program up and running. So Reps Casey Weinstein is sponsoring the legislation alongside Rep Terrence Upchurch. While the text of the measure has not yet been released, the lawmakers circulated a co-sponsored memo to colleagues on Thursday to shore up support for the effort in advance of its formal introduction. Ohioans and Americans are way ahead on this issue, and the comfort level of first decriminalization and medical cannabis and then full legalization is just so far beyond where legislators are. Fact, Weinstein told Cannabis Moment in a phone interview on Thursday, this is an effort to close the gap and catch up. So it's good for them to do this. These are the details of the bill that they're working on. Mind you, I'm happy to talk more once this is actually released, but the sponsor says he expects to formally file the legislation in the next few days once certain outstanding details are finalized. So we could see some legislation for Ohio in the next few days, which is a big deal. Another state with a large population of about 8 million, I believe. So for that adult use to come online would be big. Then we've got top Maryland lawmaker pledges to put cannabis legalization on the 2022 ballot. So at least they will ask voters in Maryland, another state with a medical program that does not have adult use yet, what they think. And I imagine that that's going to be a big resounding yes. A top Maryland lawmaker on Friday pledges that lawmakers will pass a bill to put the question of cannabis legalization before voters as a referendum on the 2022 ballot. She's formed a cannabis working group to assess the best way to structure the reform. House Speaker Adrienne Jones said that while she has personal concerns about encouraging cannabis use, particularly among children and young adults, the desperate criminal justice impact leads to believe that the voters should have the say in the future of legalization. Yeah, no shit, Adrienne. No one cares about your outdated views. What we care about is that your police force stops wasting its resources on arresting people and putting them in jail for something that should have never been criminalized in the first place, right? So the House will pass legislation early next year to put this question before the voters, but we need to start looking at changes needed to state law now, she said in a press release. To that end, Jones has appointed a 10-member working group to study a range of issues related to legalizing and regulating cannabis. So this is progress in a state like Maryland, although we won't see anything until 2022 vote, which is, the later half of 2022. Regardless, for a state that already has a functioning medical program that they're seeing the benefits of, I imagine their citizens would only benefit more from an adult use program as well. The fact that they're expecting that for 2022 is good, which means it would likely be legal for 2023. And then on to the final state, top Rhode Island senator says lawmakers are discussing a cannabis legalization compromise this summer, and he anticipates action following Labor Day in September. So we can actually expect expect Rhode Island to pass their adult use legalization before the end of 2021 as well. Senate President Dominic Ruggiero told WPRI-TV on Friday that he's not disappointed the House hasn't advanced legalization legislation yet, and that what we really wanted to do was send it over and have them look at it when this chamber passed a cannabis reform measure last month. The governor has one legalization bill, the House has one, and we always knew it was something that we're not going to do during this session, he said, referring to the legislative period before lawmakers finished the annual budget and left for the summer. But hopefully we can sit down during the summer and work something out. Hopefully they can, because obviously progress for the citizens of Rhode Island. And the Senate was able to get its legalization bill passed on the floor before the budget, but House leadership has insisted that more time is needed to reconcile and the completing measures. So regardless, this is progress, and we can expect then, based on this, that Rhode Island is more likely to get it done in 2021 than not. So that's progress. And on to this from Mass Live, Massachusetts. Home-delivered cannabis starts in Massachusetts, which is a trend we're seeing in other states. And not only does it add a ton of convenience for consumers, but it also adds jobs for anyone that can drive for Uber, Lyft, Skip the Dishes, or Uber Eats. Heck, if you're delivering alcohol for one of these alcohol delivery companies, now you can start to deliver cannabis. So the companies they mention are Drizzly and Your Green Package, but basically these companies are among the first to benefit from the creation of new state licenses for recreational cannabis delivery companies. The Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission said Friday that 11 companies so far have been licensed for deliveries, and 3 of them are now operating. And if you can imagine, if one state's starting to do this and they see that this actually works, more states are going to do that. And what this license type does, it's a major piece of the equation in making the Massachusetts cannabis industry more diverse, so they can bring in more people and employ more, equitable and inclusive. So again, not necessarily having to shut out people because they have a criminal record. As long as they have a license and they can drive a car, they can make money doing this. So this is good progress to see out of Massachusetts, a state that had previously been a little more strict on their regulations. As they are easing them, we can anticipate this is going to help sales in that state. Now over to some snippets from Todd. This is V8 cap on cannabis. You will note that those in the know, CBTIG note this AM2, are far from concerned about where we're at. Like me, I'm not concerned whatsoever. Like Todd, not concerned, but this is what makes a market. So we're going to go through this. Key takeaways from the Schumer bill draft legislation. This morning, a discussion draft of Senator Booker Schumer Wyden's cannabis reform bill entitled the Cannabis Administration Opportunity Act was released to the public for comment, and the impact overall, positive. I would agree. Although share prices did not react that way, it doesn't matter in the short term. It was ultimately positive. Overall, the details of the long-anticipated bill of bills largely falls in lines with expectations, including the removal of cannabis from the CSA, a framework for federal taxation, restorative and social justice programs, and federal body oversight on cannabis trade practices. We view the draft bill as one that attempts to garner broad and bipartisan support, notably through mechanisms that allow states to determine their own legalization status, along with social justice measures. What's next for the draft bill? The draft bill remains open for comment until September 1st. So everyone, although we do have some earnings coming up in August, which are going to show us impressive numbers from these MSOs as they continue to execute on the ground, I have no doubt. Main thing is that this bill is still just open for comments until September 1st. So there's going to be a long period until then, and I can imagine that SAFE isn't going to be introduced in any time until after that, because they're just going to use this to waste time and then realize, okay, if we cannot make any sort of progress on this bill, let's go with SAFE, to do something in the meantime, and then they'll come back with this bill next year. That's my best guess, but again, I'm just a guy with an opinion. Putting the earliest possible date for introduction into Congress late fall in our view. The bill's pathway into law still faces a long road ahead, notably in a deadlocked Senate, and its final reform remains uncertain given its early stage. Nonetheless, we emphasize the discussion draft's importance in the overall pathway of U.S. cannabis reform, which continues its steady march with increasingly meaningful catalysts and legislative efforts being put forward, particularly over the last 12 months. And again, that's the fact that Biden won, the Dems slipped the Senate, all of the states that were supposed to legalize did. So how cannabis won basically the election. We've seen Arizona and New Jersey come on, then New York, then New Mexico, then Virginia, then Connecticut, and as we can see, Rhode Island possibly, and more states are lining up to do it. All of that are the dominoes that we've wanted to fall, and they have fallen into place. So it's just a matter of dominoes continuing to fall, coupled with overwhelming public support for the issues. 91% of Americans believe cannabis in some form should be legal. We continue to view a larger regulatory-based catalytic event to be a matter of time, as a confluence of forces push reform efforts in the right direction. Now, who is this confluence of forces that are pushing reform efforts in the right direction? It's likely those forces that have been lobbying for safe banking, and the ones that have been lobbying for safe banking to get the votes that it apparently now has, right? So it just seems like all Schumer has to do is introduce it for a vote. Now, this was one that I referred to on Friday in that video. I did read through it, basically highlighting that they still believe, while this bill is now the preeminent pace of comprehensive federal cannabis legalization to watch, and this is from Needham, by the way, we think progress on safe banking will set the stage for more comprehensive reform. Now, where I just wanted to continue those, on Friday, I did not keep reading. I stopped there. But this is what it continued to say. We'd rate this bill as a positive for the industry and attribute the negative stock reaction primarily to Senator Booker's comments today that he will lay himself down to block cannabis banking reform without some aspect of restorative justice included in the bill. And so I ask you this, if no one believes politicians when they rarely do tell the truth, why on earth should you believe Booker when he practices his acting skills? Because if Booker was serious about that, that would make him the enemy of these forces that are lobbying really hard to get SAFE passed. And at the end of the day, as much as Booker made those comments, I do believe that SAFE is likely going to be the next catalyst that we end up seeing later in this year. Now, I don't know though, that's just my best guess. What do you think? Let me know in the comments, because all of these moving parts just makes it more and more interesting, but at the same time, we know that there's a lot of money behind this legalization effort. So if we do see SAFE sooner than later, that would be great. But again, not likely until after September 1st. So there's lots of time to hold out, watch prices as we may see them go sideways for a bit, and again, just sort of reformulate your plan. Just wanted to highlight this from Cresco Labs. We were thrilled to announce Cresco Cannabis and Mindy's Edibles wins at the Michigan Weed Trails Historic Hash Bash. Now, we just wanted to point out that this is from Michigan Cannabis Trail, a small account. So what this post is really just to show is that at least Cresco Labs brands sell well and is proof of concept. So they just wanted to highlight this. Proud to be part of a community committed to the advocacy of federal cannabis legalization and to giving cannabis users and patients a voice. 100%. Now, I am a shareholder in Cresco Labs, so this is not advice or anything. Just highlighting this because as a shareholder, I want to find proof of concept that these brands do well. And when we see Cresco with numerous first place, second place awards, that definitely gives some conviction that their brands do sell well. Now, on to some MSO earnings. Harvest Health Recreation to hold their second quarter 2021 on August 10th. So we'll be anticipating that during the same week, and they'll likely be coming out on the same day as Verano's then. Then we have Air Wellness to hold their second quarter 2021 conference call on Tuesday, August 17th. So that'll be the first of a few MSOs coming the following week after that first big week. And then last week, we actually have Tilray announcing their fourth quarter and fiscal 2021 financial results on July 28th. So not this week, but next week. And this is going to be very interesting because this is the first time that we're going to see Aphria and Tilray's numbers put together. We'll see if this merger actually does save on cost synergies that they were saying, what big of an impact that really leaves. But regardless, this is going to be interesting because is it possible with the continued Canadian growth, especially in Ontario, and with the easing of lockdown restrictions, that these earnings can be better than expected? Of course. And with the fact that Tilray and Canadian LPs can list on U.S. major exchanges and they get access from U.S. capital, they could benefit. But at the same time, they might not. So we don't know what's going to come. And I'm excited to see what Tilray puts out, but I'm also more excited to see what MSOs put out in compared to what Tilray can do. And so lastly, this is an interesting piece from Normal, an analysis as cannabis legalization correlates with higher home values. So I just wanted to dip into this a little bit. As a data analyst with the group reviewed publicly available data from Zillow and the U.S. Census, among other sources, to explore the relationships between home values, cannabis legalization, dispensaries, and tax revenue. She then issued multiple regression analysis to model current trends and predict future patterns. Consistent with prior studies, such as those here, and here, if you want to grab the link below and grab them, the analysis reported between April 2017 and April 2021, property values rose $17,000 more in states where recreational cannabis is legal compared to states where where cannabis is illegal or limited to medical use. The author added, "We found that cities with more dispensaries are positively correlated with higher home values, suggesting legalization boosts jobs and economic growth." Yeah, no shit. With each new dispensary a city adds, property values increased by $519. She concluded, as more states legalize cannabis, there is strong evidence that legalization drives higher property values, particularly in areas that allow recreational cannabis and welcome retail dispensaries. Huh, you don't say! These investments can improve quality of life in communities across the nation while attracting tourism and new residents who drive real estate demand. The report findings come just days after separate data concluded, and you can grab the findings here, that the establishment of licensed cannabis retailers did not influence young people's intention to experiment with cannabis. Exactly. It's just a new store like any other, and they're not going to care. So the more data that we can compile, the better picture of reality that we can paint and the better story we can tell, because it just highlights again what we've known all along. Ending cannabis prohibition leads to more benefits than not. And I feel grateful to be on the right side of history so that I could relay all of this to you as we watch it unfold in real time. So that is it for this week's episode, folks. I hope you got some value out of it, and I want to thank you so much for tuning in. What do you think about the draft bill or the positive sentiment shift we're seeing in American media? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or concerns, and I'd be happy to address them or have a discussion. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it, subscribe if you don't want to miss any future ones, and I will catch you on Wednesday for a midweek update. Have a great weekend, everybody.